Hosted by you/Able19985. Buckle up. 15 years ago, I was 25 and finishing my contract. My then girlfriend of 3 years, Natalie, was acting increasingly strange. I came back from a 2-month assignment and was prepared to break up with her. She came by and gave me the good news that she was pregnant. I asked how far along she was, and she said 5 weeks. So I broke it off with her and told her she needed to do better at math. She refused the breakup and insisted the baby was mine. I told her the following: we do a paternity test, and if the child was mine, we could talk about financial support and custody arrangements with lawyers. She refused both and told everyone we knew that I was a deadbeat for getting her pregnant and leaving her. I explained to everyone that I was on a 2-month assignment when she conceived, but a few insisted that, for the sake of decency, I house her and provide limited support. I consulted a lawyer about this mess, and the lawyer made it very clear that any overt support I gave could be seen as me taking responsibility. I told my friends this, and most dropped the issue, except for one guy who insisted that charity couldn't be used as a legal cudgel. I told him if he believed that, he could house her. He agreed to drop it after that. The child was born, and I'm not even going to do the whole "she didn't look like me" thing because most babies are born with squished faces. All I saw were the pictures she sent me with messages like "Emma wants to know where daddy is" and such. She still refused to take any paternity tests. But her constantly showing up with that baby got to the point where I filed a restraining order. Fun fact, in my state, a permanent restraining order is not, in fact, permanent. It is 2 years long. The only way to get it longer is if there was a violent crime associated, and apparently bugging someone with a baby that's not theirs is not a violent crime. So my life for the last 14 years has been me renewing the restraining order every 2 years because once it clears, Natalie shows up again with my not child. I eventually found a nice girl, got married, and now have a 9-year-old son, Henry. My wife, Kim, is well aware of Natalie and Emma. When the cycle begins again, I always say the same thing: we do a paternity test, and once paternity is proven, I will take custody and set up financial support. Natalie always refuses and says both are insulting. Recently, the cycle started again, and this time Emma showed up first. She approached my son during a school event, a visit to the zoo, and said, "Hi, I'm your big sister Emma." Henry knows about stranger danger and ran to a teacher. I had to have a very painful talk with the teachers and parents who were at the event about my relationship with Emma and Natalie, and how Emma was never my daughter. I even called her my daughter once or twice in the conversation. After the group disbanded, one of the mothers confronted me and said that while Natalie was wrong to tell this poor child I was her father, calling her my daughter was mocking the situation. I kind of get where she's coming from, but I can't help this child. The honest truth is that making light of the 2-year cycles is the closest I can get to finding peace in the situation. Edit. To answer the repeated question, in my state, the mother has to start the petition for the father to be established and the test to begin. There is no instance where a father can start the petition. There was a chance to do this when Emma was born, but the window was exactly 1 month, and I was much too focused on the restraining order, not thinking the paternity angle would bite me in the rear. One last time, to everyone saying, just ask for custody, that'll force a DNA test. It literally can't be done. I've been through this enough with a lawyer and have consulted with other lawyers. There are laws protecting children, and many of them exist for good reason. I'll explain it the way my lawyer explained it. Imagine there's a woman who ran from an abusive ex. She finds out after she escaped that she's pregnant. She gives birth, never puts the ex on the birth certificate, and never tries to file for support because she wants to get as far away from him as possible. He finds out years later and tries to rope her back in using the child as leverage. She can just say no, and the state has to let it go. There is, however, a provision that if the father was involved enough to know when the birth was, he could submit his DNA to the state within 31 days of birth as a potential father, but that time has long passed. The law is designed this way on purpose. In the eyes of the family court, I am a random person, and I was never claimed to be Emma's father. If you think the state wants all children to be claimed by fathers and will gladly submit any DNA test whenever any potential father shows up, find a random single mom, call the family court, and say you want to claim her child. I am tired of everyone acting like all I needed to do was fill out one sheet of paper and this nightmare would end. It doesn't work that way. Update 1. I got off the phone with my attorney. We have a preliminary hearing on the new restraining order this week. We will most likely be issued a temporary restraining order, followed by another hearing for the 2-year order. Child Protective Services is investigating Natalie and Emma's living situation. The teacher's report held a lot of weight, and my lawyer thinks this might actually be a way to end the madness now. In family court, for minors, there is something called a guardian ad litem, who is a court-appointed guardian for legal purposes, procedures, and decisions, including medical ones. If the family court appoints such a guardian for Emma, we can ask this temporary guardian for the DNA test and finally put this to rest. The madness might actually have an ending in sight. Adding here, I feel like I need to explain the relationship I had with Natalie all those years ago. When I got back from my 2-month assignment, I was already set on breaking up with her. Her telling me she was pregnant was never going to make me marry her. In fact, I doubted she was pregnant for several weeks. In the last year of our relationship, Several red flags appeared in her behavior, ranging from demanding I check in with her while at work, insisting I only hang out with friends when she was present, and exhibiting extreme bouts of jealousy if I ever seemed too friendly with women, including waitresses. I was in a line of work that demanded being away for long stints, which she hated, but it also kept me out of her reach for long periods. I think it was halfway through that last year when I realized that, while I was away, I did not miss her. In fact, I was relieved to plop into a cot and fall asleep after long hours of work without thinking about her. When the pregnancy turned out to be real, I made it clear that with a paternity test, I would pay support, split custody, and be a co-parent and nothing more. She wanted me to be her husband, no questions asked. No test, just pure blind faith and devotion to her and the child. She insisted that the test was insulting. There was never going to be a relationship, and there was no relationship to salvage with Natalie. On the advice of the first attorney I hired, the deal was no test, no contact. Op in the comments. The nature of my job back then meant I was on assignment for weeks at a time, sometimes as long as 2 months. The amount of time I was home for the half year was small and not all consecutive. In relationships, there are moments when you realize you aren't happy and don't miss the other person, but it's still a bit of a fog you're working through. Half-started conversations about where we see ourselves and whether there was anything left were dropped, etc. I'd like to believe I wasn't codependent then, but the lack of sleep and stretches of contact made it so that longing for normalcy meant longing for even the bad. Familiarity is a crutch like that. During that last trip, I steeled myself to break up with her when I got home. We were never going to be in a relationship afterward. In the past 14 years, all the mutual friends we had have worked their way out of my contact list. I don't see her parents, and she doesn't see mine. We have no social circles in common anymore. Update 2. The preliminary hearing on the new restraining order went well. Emma and Natalie were there, and we discovered that Emma is currently living with her great-grandmother and has a guardian ad litem, court-appointed guardian for legal matters. My lawyer thinks this means whatever was found in Natalie's home situation warranted removing Emma, and potentially severe enough that the great-grandmother only has physical custody, necessitating the appointment of a guardian ad litem. During the hearing, we went through the whole song and dance, the past restraining orders, the whole deal. My lawyer turned to Emma's representative and said we were willing to submit to a DNA test and put this to bed. Natalie looked like she was having a conniption at that, and her own lawyer urged her to shush. Emma's representative accepted, and we were cheek swabbed in the courthouse. A temporary order is now in place while a second hearing is scheduled in the upcoming weeks for the 2-year order. The order covers immediate family on both sides, and as I've detailed in the past, Natalie is actually good at following court orders, oddly. We have about 4 weeks before we get the definitive test results back, but I'm not too worried either way. P.S. There were some people who thought the person who said the court couldn't use charity as a cudgel was the father. Well, that's Jim. I haven't talked to Jim in 10 years, but Jim is not straight and hated Natalie. He just also happened to be a give the shirt off his back kind of dude, and as long as I knew him, he volunteered at a food pantry. His protests came mostly from naivety, not self-interest. Update 3. We got the results in late last week, as did Emma's party. I am not the father. Natalie had a major blow-up when she heard the news from her grandmother Sylvia. This blow-up included a major tantrum on my front lawn, which also violated the temporary restraining order. Natalie has been arrested, and Sylvia hasn't bailed her out. Sylvia has communicated to my lawyer that she wanted to apologize for bankrolling Natalie's life for the past 15 years. I only met Sylvia a few times when I was dating Natalie. I know Natalie grew up with her, and Sylvia had money, but I was never really told the extent of that. Sylvia has communicated, via my lawyer, which is technically allowed with the restraining order in place, that both she and Emma want to send me an apology via a letter. I told my lawyer they were free to write whatever letters they wanted, as long as this was the last communication we had with them. The 2-year restraining order is certainly going to be granted now, with the emergency one violated. We still don't know what caused Emma to be removed from Natalie's care or if Natalie has any underlying issues. If we do get the letters, I will post them. Update 4. I received the letters on Friday after my lawyer reviewed and deemed them acceptable. Sylvia's letter detailed that Natalie had a rough family life, things I already knew about Natalie's father running out, then her mother, leaving Sylvia to raise her. There was a lot of I did my best with what I had. Sylvia explained that she and Emma will be okay. She still has some money, not screw you money, but enough to give Emma a very decent jump start in life when she turns 18. Sylvia housed Natalie and Emma in a house she owned in the city while Sylvia lived about an hour north, out in the country. She sent Natalie money monthly for expenses and saw them about 4 times a year. Regarding Emma's living situation, the only thing Sylvia said was that the photos she saw of the city house broke her heart. Needless to say, Sylvia pledged not to enable Natalie anymore. Emma's letter was a lot sadder. It started with "Father who is not my father," which I found strange. She detailed how Natalie told her that if she behaved, I would accept her. My acceptance of her hinged entirely on Emma doing as she was told. Emma said Sylvia has her in therapy and that Natalie told them both I was dodging the test using legal loopholes. She said seeing me suggest the test in person made her feel like Natalie was right. I was able to accept her. She felt happy and hopeful. When the results came in, she said it was worse than not knowing at all. She apologized for scaring my son, calling him brother who is not my brother in the letter. There is a strange tone to her letter, and I feel like she is coming to terms with things. The letter was painful to read, but both Emma and Sylvia pledged not to interact with any of us anymore. Natalie is still in jail. Maybe it's finally over.